Wait, stop. That's the one. Welcome to ZEN TENN Speaks, a show where I make new friends and reconnect with old ones. A show where everyone's stories may inspire you to tell your own story. In this podcast, we encourage everyone to get rid of shame, guilt, fear, doubt, and judgments for themselves and for others, and replace those with love, empathy, compassion, understanding, kindness, and to do your best in everything that you do. In essence, to get rid of things that no longer serve your well-being. To be true to yourself and be honest with others. No need to be politically correct. That's out the window with 2020. Here, we tell the raw, uncensored story, your story, and tell the truth as you see it. Make sure you live your fulfilled life without permission or apologies. So, if you have a juicy, interesting, raw, unapologetic story and inspiring, please make sure to contact me at zentenn21@gmail.com. It is ZENTENN21@gmail.com. Or you can find me on most social media platforms. You know it. The IG, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, OnlyFans. I mean, not really. But yes, OnlyFans. Just kidding. Not. As you may guessed it, my name is Zen, and welcome to the show. So I'm very honored again to be with you, and thank you for answering. It's like you message someone who's famous, and then you don't know if they're gonna.
Who's famous? In my own brain, I'm famous. As Coco once said on Fame, I'm already famous, just nobody knows it yet.
I love it.
Yeah. That's what about famous, TV show from a long time ago. Thank you, Derek. Thank you for reaching out, and it's so cool to talk with you.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, I know it's just confusing. My name is not Derek.
Oh, who the hell are you? Am I in the right apartment? Where am I? What would you like me to call you? Who are you?
Sorry, I should have established that first. Okay, so usually I have a timeline where I feel something. Maybe that will come up, but I don't remember when it clicked for me to apply empathy. Mm-hmm. But I totally do. And last year, because of the narcissist relationship I had with somebody, it came in very handy, and I applied the empathy there. Yeah. And I'm glad that I did, because I saw things different light, and I discovered things that came up for me, traumas. Mm-hmm. I read a meme that says relationships will bring up traumas that you refuse to look at when you're a kid. So that brought up some things because of how it's not a blaming thing, just like a factual, how he treated me. And so instead of taking it like, oh, poor me, how dare you did this to me, I saw it as a gift, because what happened to me, I loved it so much, which is funny, and I don't, maybe someone else can resonate with this, but most people I talk to, they're like, oh, you're crazy. I love the experience, and I love him more for it. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't take it like, you did this to me, and I'm like broken. Of course, I was broken because of the rejection. Mm-hmm. And I was broken. I was first time ever I can ever remember that I was depressed in my life because of that too. Yeah. But I don't blame him for it, because actually, funny thing is, prior to this interview, I had a interview with a hypnotherapist, and he was saying how some people blame themselves for something that happened. And I had to clarify, when something happened, it's not that I blame myself. I take responsibility for my part of it. Like the depression, me personally, and I've mentioned things like that on Facebook. People get really offended, but I don't know if they don't understand that I'm talking about myself. My depression, I know why it happened, and I know I kept myself in that because I took myself out of it too. And I know the reason. And some people, their depression is their prerogative, because that's one topic, like my body, my choice, or whatever women things. Those topics I don't want to really talk about them or have my opinion, because it's not my body. I'm not in that sphere. Same with depression, because everyone have it for their own reason, and they know why, or they know their own body, etc. And it was my first time. It lasted a whole year, and it was really like, WTF? What is this? What is this? And I was like, oh, that's depression. Now I know what people feel.
It's heavy.
Because I didn't know what they felt like. When people talk about depression, I was like, okay.
Yeah, you don't
until
understand that until you've been through that. And then you have greater empathy.
Yes.
Because you have much more insight into that experience.
Yes.
You know, and that's part of learning through growth. And I mean, again, I completely have exactly the same take on abusive relationships, because I used to actively engage in emotionally, and the last one was a physically abusive. But I was there. The common denominator is that I participated. And it was after one of them became physical that I started to seriously ask that question. I can't keep blaming other people for something that keeps happening. I have to look at my 50% of my participation if it's ever going to stop. And that was when I was 28. And finally started being able to shift that and build relationships that were healthier because of that work. Because of that willingness to say, I am engaging in an energy that's harmful. And really get into deeper with the help of a therapist as to why I was doing that. What from my past and my childhood was leading me to engage with adults in an abusive way, and then to start to have the agency and decision to change that.
Very important.
Yeah.
Very important. I've noticed people get offended with the word self-accountability.
Yeah, now that is...
Do you find the same?
I think... when we conflate that with blame, then it's a problem. But what we're talking about actually is conducive to agency and empowerment. I talk very much in both my books and all of my work about responsibility. That when there is a pattern here, if I'm engaging in a pattern of relationships where I'm being treated badly, I need to take responsibility for my part of that. Or if not, then just keep repeating it over and over again, blaming other people when I'm participating.
Right, people see it as blame. And maybe it's that I haven't conveyed it in a perfect way as you mentioned. Have you stated it? But online, people are like, blame me, what fault? I'm like, oh, that's not what I'm trying to say. And and it works. Again, my guru says, talk about things that you know, as in what you've gone through. So I've gone through it, and I'm speaking about it. And of course, they respond based on what they experience themselves as well. And I totally respect that and understand. And until I take full accountability for what I put in, then that's how I started to grow and changing my own patterns. Because I discovered last year I had abandonment issues, and the way I respond or the way I cope is with codependency. I'm a good host. I give everyone the world basically as a bribe to keep them in my life. And I didn't know that until last year. Thanks to my narcissist relationship. And this is why I say thanks to him, and I don't blame him. He's not a bad... He just is him. But if I blame him and saw him as a devil, then I don't think I would connect that to see what I just discovered about myself. And I'm very grateful for him. And I was previously, prior to him, in other relationships. I think those stops like 2016 and moving backwards. Yeah, like 15, 14, etc. I was in relationship with people, the term is hobosexuals. Have you heard of that term?
I'm trying to think what that could mean. It could mean a few things. Tell me more.
So the word hobo and sexual. So basically, guys or girls or any person who get in a relationship with you to stay in your home.
Okay, that's where I thought that was going.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, because of my codependency, wanting people to stay in, so I won't get abandoned, the first week, we're boyfriends, okay, and then they stay in for months. The longest was 6 months. I'm glad it wasn't for years. But then it was a pattern. Yeah. Until I was like, wait a minute. Before, I was blaming them, calling them users. Mm-hmm. And I said, and that one of my things, I'm learning about the should. Mm-hmm. I've been learning that before, but I'm learning that more and more not to say that or have a should mentality. However, before, I had a victim mentality and a user calling people names. And I'm working on not to call people names. I'll just say, this is what it was, user factual instead of demonizing. Yeah. So I fell into the trap of calling people users. Yeah. And I said, wait a minute, they're not users. Let's say if you need something, you know you need it. Let's just say you love coffee. Mm-hmm. And you love the smell, and I offer you coffee. Wouldn't you accept it with... Mm-hmm. And when that connected, I was like, yes, I offer these people the world. Why wouldn't they take it? And then when they leave, we didn't have any contract. Yeah. And why should I feel like a victim? They used me. Yeah. And I said, this is wrong on my part. Yeah. Not that I belittle myself or push myself down, but it was the accountability. First of all, I don't own anybody. So if they leave, they can leave on their own terms. Mm-hmm. And I had to find my crap. Yeah. Which empowered me. Yes. So. Yes. And with, of course, watching different people online and either videos or reading books, etc. Self-accountability and not being you can be, of course, you could have been a victim of an attack, but not keeping that as a badge of honor kind of a thing, but just to rise above it as being empowered. Yes. I watched a documentary. It was pretty painful. And I love what she said. I don't remember exactly, but whoever watched it, if they saw it, it's like those crime things. She is a girl who got... And then the mother and her fight for the government to extend the... What's that thing called? When they... To put someone to trial. I think they extended to like 16 or 14 years or something. But before it was like, I could be wrong on the timeline, but let's say if it was like a year, if someone you have a year for them to go to jail.
Oh, right. You have like a year to prosecute or...
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And then they extended that, and then it was because of her. You know when something happened, they call them, they have a bill, and then they put the bill on someone's name, etc. And it was because of her. And at the end of the documentary, she says, well, she was religious too, and that's fine. She's grateful that God had led that to happen because moving forward, she helped other people. And because of that situation, there's that DNA thing to prove, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, you never know in your situation what else could come out of it. Right. And if you're not grateful for the situation, or if you don't see things, like when my guru says, if you are focused on labeling things good or bad, then you're stuck in the good and the bad. But if you just see life as thing that happens, then you have a broader vision to see, okay, this happened. I'm done with homosexuals. Yeah. And I see the patterns and I stop contributing. Yeah. You know, they come up. Yeah. And I stop contributing, it ends right there.
That to me is brave. You asked earlier about brave. That to me is brave. That exploration, that internal questioning is brave. To ask yourself that question, like, how am I, if it's a pattern, what is my role in the pattern of the users and your role in that? That to me is a really brave question.
Yes.
That takes a lot of integrity. But what a gift to give to yourself and to the people around you to ask that question. So you don't have to spend your life repeating this over and over again in a way that hurts and creates so much suffering around you.
And I feel like not of hurting them, it's
you
helping them in that hurt too, if I engage. Right, because
eventually they walk away from that feeling disempowered or feeling shitty about what they, on some level, that they lose their relationship with you. That would be hurtful. And, again, maybe furthers their cycle of like, I'm a bad person, I don't deserve stability, I don't deserve quality people in my life. So I think when we do this work and we start to practice differently and we act and react differently, that is the bravery, that is the integrity. That is what shapes and changes our relationships.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely. We all brave in our own right.
Yeah. Especially after 2020. I mean, like we said, for some people, a great year. For some people, a very, very painful year.
Right.
For a lot of us, it was both. But that we all who survived 2020 survived it.
Right,
And I think it shows everyone who is still here today has incredible resilience. And bravery.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the word should harms mental health and reinforce the status quo norms around homophobia, racism, misogyny. Can you please tell us more what you mean about that statement and a bit about your book, Absolutely Shouldless?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. So I wrote Absolutely Shouldless about 15 years ago, but it was really based on my own journey. We talked about keeping it real, of being severely depressed growing up, very, very anxious, and finally at the age of 19 having a breakthrough saying, instead of blaming people, instead of looking back and saying who did what, or I'm such a victim, of saying I've really only ever made one error. There's only one mistake that I've ever made. And that was to believe that I should be different from who I am, that I should be more masculine, that I should look different, that I should talk different, that I should be straight, that I should be athletic, that I should want different things, that I should enjoy sports, that I should be a different person than who I am, which were some of the messages I received growing up. I finally took accountability for that and said, if I just took a day, just a day, without shoulding myself, what would that feel like? And it was euphoric. It felt great.
Nice.
So I started practicing just like having a shouldless week. And I was in school. I was at college at Santa Cruz, California at the time. It's kind of this hippy-dippy thing. So I wore this sign around my neck that had like shoulds with a arrow, just like the cover of the book. That's the cover. That's the sign I wore around my neck. And everybody was really interested. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I explained. I'm holding myself accountable for going a week without using the word should, so I could see what that would feel like. And so many people around me just like, let's do that too. And so many people thought that they felt better if they could reduce or eliminate the word should from their internal dialogue about themselves, from their relationships when they're judging their families or their partners, and the world around us, because it's inherently contentious.
Yes.
And if we're approaching social change or politics or social justice from a place of contention, I've seen some really good people burn out quickly, because it's just like so aggravating and frustrating. Because it's not like if I say, well, I should be sitting here on a chair talking with you. Well, we're sitting here talking, so it's not a problem. But if I say the world should be different from how it is right now, and then I go outside and the world is not how I want it to be, that's where the intersection conflates of frustration, anger, and then eventually depression, substance abuse, violence.
Yes.
And then I also noticed how so many of American norms were focused on shoulds of white supremacy and toxic masculinity. So the should we're seeing a lot of this be resisted now with Black Lives Matter. And we're seeing the pushback against that, people of color shouldn't vote. I mean, that's kind of the big thing. Women shouldn't have the choice to control their reproductive rights. For a long time, gays and lesbians especially gay men, were at the center of, HIV and AIDS. And somehow we've gone through these recent years of still having access to PrEP, and U equals U, which is undetectable is untransmittable. But all these things that often we integrate at an early age that are connected to societal structures of homophobia, racism, misogyny, transphobia, that get deep into our core beliefs that I should be different. There's something wrong with me. I should be someone else. I should be normal. And if we can challenge and actively change those and then change our reactions to that, that is where there is this opportunity to bring forth more joy, more productivity, right, and more mental health.
Definitely. And a lot of things for me keeps going back to my last year new motto of like, if you're not shooting yourself, then you don't, if you're shooting yourself, then you're going to have shame associated with that and guilt, right? Yes. And you're judging yourself.
Yes.
And so, yeah, definitely.
And as we're getting older, as I turn 50, there's already, like, if I'm not really careful, there's so many ageist shoulds out there. You know,
yes,
like, I shouldn't have wrinkles.
I
shouldn't have
those
gray hair. But yeah, I'm saying, like, I've been doing this now my whole life, but I just
right,
notice as I get older, it's like, oh, wow, those are still out there. And there's a part of my brain that even when I'm not consciously
right,
believing or buying into it, there's a part of my brain that's taking it in. So I have to, my work is to actively be aware of that, notice it when it comes up, and call bullshit on it, because it's bullshit.
Bullshit, yeah. And it's great that you're vocal about it. Yeah. So thank you very much, because if you weren't, and part of my work to inspiring others to what inspires them, that's what you're doing. You are doing you, and you inspire other people.
Thank you.
And in my previous conversation with someone else, I said sometimes, and even in this conversation, like the way we behaved when we're ourselves, people are watching. They take notes. And my guru says the best way, because someone was asking about politics, he says, it's not that he doesn't talk about politics, but he says the best way to change anybody is to just inspire. Just be you.
Yes. Our actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. You don't need to be like, I'm going to change you. Right. And I've learned that 5 years ago living with housemates. Because before, I fell into the trap, getting mad about something and want to change and want to keep being a pitch and the manager and all this stuff. Now I'm just like them. And if we all have rules, and then when a rule is broken, I said, not verbally like that, but hey, I go by the rules too. What can I do to help you abide by the rules as well, so we can be like, make this work? Because before they moved in, they agreed to it. And I understand human nature. People relax, or sometimes people lie too, I've noticed. But I've often bring it back to, okay, I understand. How can we go back into what we agreed on so we can make this work for us? Because you moved in because obviously you liked it. Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of people who've told me when they come in, they feel the energy. And I'm big on energy. I want to make sure, like, and of course, if someone doesn't, not that he should be nice, because I don't control his behavior. However, if he's he agreed to be here, and then he either, I know some people lie, but I don't know what was his case was. But he was violent to the point of physical. He didn't get too physical, but he was banging the wall and be like, So what I understood is, not that he should be nice, and whatever he's going on for him, that's his prerogative. However, this is not the place for him, kind of a thing. And I also have to live in reality, because I also I got broken up with by a guy that says I'm living fantasy world too much, and he couldn't deal with that. I respected that. That's true. And I had to be in the middle where to also live with reality. Because funny thing is, and when he said that, I was confused, but now I get it. This guy who was violent, back then, if I was in South Park land, I would let him stay in my house. Because I did let homosexuals and narcissists in my life, and making excuses for them, and said, just like that quote with, when usually in society, it's usually like a woman and a man's story where like, I can change him kind of a thing. I'll be like, oh, I can change him. And that's fantasy, and that can be dangerous.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so I had to live in reality and said, we spoke, you read the ad, you liked it, presumably. We spoke for an hour on the phone. You liked it, presumably. You came here, you saw the house, we talked for another hour. And then you totally 100% different than what we agreed on.
Yeah.
So you can be whoever you want, but not in this house.
Absolutely.
And that's a boundary that I had to grow with and accept and live in. And with the word should, it's funny that you mentioned about the shooting ourselves. I won't say I didn't should myself 100%, but I would say 95% I rarely should myself. However, for other people, that person should love me. That person shouldn't be doing this. That person shouldn't have said this. Like that, the pointing finger of making someone should. And then I learned not to should someone who's Baron Katie. You know Baron Katie? I love Baron Katie. Yes. Oh my God, what book is that?
Loving What Is.
Yeah, when she talks about ask the questions.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
wonderful.
That's another work with ego.
Wonderful.
That book I had to read twice. I mean, not twice, 3 times.
Yeah.
The first time I was offended.
And it can be offensive because it really places that responsibility in the turnaround. And then she had one about relationships. I need your love. Is that true? Right? So I
read all the books.
Yeah, I think Loving What Is and I Need Your Love. Is that true?
Yes.
Because people don't like it because it really does emphasize what you were saying.
Yes, it hit my ego so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to read it again. I was like, you know what? F this. I need to read it again because as the universe, 2016, I woke up one day, I was like, I'm done with bullshitting myself. I'm done with this bullshit life. Universe, throw anything at me. Throw it. I'm glad there hasn't been death or disease. So thank you. But if that comes, I ask for it. Yeah. So because I want to grow. Yeah. And that's around that time I was getting the relationships that bring things for you. And they were tough. And they were challenging. And I'm glad that I'm open-minded to learn. Yeah. So I'm done shooting people, definitely. And I'm also done shooting myself, like the last 5%. Yeah. Because as of 2020, I was like, okay, so the most I made 2019 was $34,000. Yeah. I live a great life. Yeah. Like, whatever. But of course, my friend says, she said, even the universe or God, there's so much in the world. Not to be greedy, but you don't need to be content. You can be content, like be happy, blissful, and I'm happy what I have. However, it's human nature to grow and want more, as long as it's not like overboard of the greed side. And of course, as you get older, you need to get your nuts together and accumulate. So for harder times with 2020 show us. Even if you were ready or not, it's like, okay, you need to save up on that money or save up on anything, health or whatever it was. And so I was just like, oh, okay. So that was the last 5% of like shoots. I'm gonna come out. I have an OnlyFans.
Yeah, you do? All right.
Yes,
okay.
My link will be below. I'm just kidding.
Wonderful.
But I was like,
a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It.
Yeah.
Because guess what? You don't want to hire me? Minimum wage is $15 in New York City. Let's say I know it's not that. But let's say for whatever reason, because I have OnlyFans or whatever, people don't want to hire me or don't want to give me this, I'll work at a cashier where no one knows me. $15, that's $600 a week after tax. Let's say $500, whatever. I'm good enough to save my money where all these people who's talking like smack, they probably in debt or whatever is happening in their life that their prerogative, I can still survive.
Right.
And whatever they say is their problem.
See, and that to me is real wealth. Because that is the mindset. That is the energy. There's people who have a lot of money who don't know that kind of freedom and don't know that kind of liberation.
Yes. As you mentioned with your friend, when you mentioned that, I feel for him. And I used to be there, but not that I was like big anyway.
Uh-huh.
That's another thing that pushed me more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not big anyway, so what are you gonna do? Cancel me?
Right.
Like, and I feel for people. If you're in politics or you're a teacher, I feel for you. And if you're in New York, I tell you, there's no ceiling. The sky is not the limit.
Yeah.
If we're saying the sky was the limit, we wouldn't even have a computer that's videotaping us.
Right.
Because whoever invented this, if they thought there were a limit, we wouldn't have that.
Right.
So everything is possible. Even if you're in Kansas, you can move out of Kansas if you want to. That's
I agree. So that is real abundance, right? It's just that mindset. It's that energy and that awareness. And when we know that,
yes.
even if we get off track, we know that we can come back to that. We can return. We can return to abundance, return to love.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the real energy that makes living, growing, experiencing, and aging a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
In my, once we know these things to be true.
Yes.
Yes.
And a good thing you did those work early, because later on in life you won't be a sour, grumpy old man.
I was a grumpy child. I'm much more liberated as an old man than I was as a child. I was, not such a happy camper as a kid.
Yeah.
I kind of went the other direction with that.
I think that's better.
It is. I think it's more fun. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, the should is very important, and definitely get the book.
Thank
and
you.
Apply that in your life. It's very liberating.
Thank
it liberates, and as you mentioned, the self-liberation, and I didn't think about that. For me, is liberating others from the shit that I put on them.
Yeah.
So basically, it can do both.
Right.
For yourself and others.
And, you can just do your own experiment. It's like when you should people, if you have kids, if you have parents, if you have partners, and you should them, what are the results you get? If you have employees, if you're a supervisor, and you tell your employees what they should do, how often do they follow?
Right.
Most of the clinics I worked in, if somebody came in a meeting and said, this is how you should be doing your paperwork, we would generally do the opposite because no one wants to be told what they should do. Mm-hmm. What I think people can do if they are aware is to engage in change, to say if we are going to be in a relationship, what are our values, our priorities, our goals? Can we act in consistent accordance with those goals versus you should do the dishes or, you should be doing that. Well, what are the intentions we have for the home that we have created together? And does doing the dishes right now, is that consistent with that? Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not a matter of being judged or me trying to take away your agency, but a sense of we're in this together. We're in this relationship or this family or this office setting, this world. We're in this together.
Yes.
Let's do this together. And I think people respond more affirmatively to that. What I say in the book is that
100%.
Sometimes you can get people to comply if you use shoulds and for a short period of time. So when COVID first hit, and even now, it's like we want people to be wearing masks. It would be better if people were inspired to do that, if they understood the science, even though it's so confusing the way it's been explained by the CDC and the powers that be. It's harm reduction, it's not harm elimination. But this idea that, especially in the beginning in New York City, it didn't really matter what you believe. I mean, that was kind of the message. Whether you believe in this or not, you need to wear a mask.
Right.
And if we all do this together,
yes.
if everybody's called in as New Yorkers together, we can fight this together. And we did.
Yes.
We had from 40% average testing rate in April of 2020, it went down to 1% 6 months later because we were called in to change things as a community. That's very different from telling people, you should wear a mask, you should do this, you should do that. Or
shaming them, yeah.
Or shaming them when they don't do that.
Have you seen... Because I've seen ads about, not in the New York City, because I feel like the New York City, like you say, they rally people together so we can do this together. But I've seen other things on Facebook that's shaming people, wear masks, and a lot of people are doing that. And I think that could work, I would say, very minimal.
You can get compliance.
Yeah.
Short-term, immediate compliance.
Right.
So if you need short-term immediate compliance, shoulds can be helpful with that. If you actually want people to change their minds and change their behavior so that they do it even when no one's looking.
Yes, yes.
They do it. It's like you tell a kid, you shouldn't eat cookies. Well, they're just not going to eat cookies around you. As soon as you turn your back, they're going to grab a cookie. If you, work with a child to say, what, do you want to be healthy? Do you want to grow? Well, then maybe you could eat less cookies, or maybe, no cookies on certain days.
Right.
As long as you tell someone what they should do, you may or may not get a short-term response, but as soon as your back is turned, those masks are going to come off. They're going to do whatever the hell they want to do.
Exactly.
So shoulds are not an effective way to change behavior.
Yes, definitely.
And I have seen, and unfortunately, my worst fears about shoulds that I wrote in this book back when I wrote it in 2006 have really come to pass with COVID. You have people on both sides simply screaming at each other. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. And then everybody wonders, why are we in this mess?
Right. And no one's doing the should that someone else is telling them to do.
Right.
It's like no one's compromising.
Right. They're just, on both sides, it's just screaming.
Right. And
then everyone's like, well, how come we're not going any further with this? Because telling people what they should do does not result in behavioral change.
So question,
yes.
Using the word should.
Yes.
Should someone use condoms and should someone use PrEP?
I have no idea because I cannot tell anybody what to do with their body.
Great.
I wouldn't have any clue what anyone should do with their body. But what I can say is that if someone is HIV negative and they want to enjoy sex and they want to have sex without fear of HIV, then there's many ways that they can do that. PrEP is a major way and the most effective way that we have available today to prevent HIV if you're HIV negative. Condoms also have a great service for people who want to use them. The thing is, most people don't want to use them, which is why we haven't really seen changes in this country.
And knowing that helps, because that's the thing. Well, you're into psychology, and I'm into it too, but it was never my profession. I studied it. And I think it's important to understand human nature. Mm-hmm. And living here with 4 people, and I love it, I understand human nature, how human operates. Mm-hmm. So if you know people not going to use condoms, and then let's say the society says you should use it in a thing, it's kind of like when I saw a documentary a long time ago, like in the 90s, where they were promoting condoms in Africa, but they were doing it in a shameful way. It didn't help. Let's say they're promoting it to not have HIV, but the religion were saying, but if you use it, it's against God. Yeah. So they're shaming them. And then there's the other people, and I saw that coming with PrEP. If you use condoms, then you're a whore and you're a slut. And then what do? You don't use PrEP or condoms. Right. And you go bare anyway because human nature, that's what we do. That's why we're 7 billion people. Right. And it's like, and if you don't see that fact, then you're just gonna stuck in the should and the shame. Right. And it doesn't fix anything. Right.
So that's exactly a point I make in the book, and that was written before PrEP, was that in the HIV world, we had spent 30 years trying to tell people you should wear condoms when you have sex. And it didn't work. And then all these people were like, well, why can't we get people to use condoms? It's like, well, because you keep telling people what they should do with their bodies in some of the most intimate and vulnerable experiences in their life. Mm-hmm. Which also, as you point out, goes against human nature, because all of us that are here that can see or hear this interview got here because of bareback sex.
Exactly.
Or because of something that didn't work. And like if people use condoms, condoms break. Mm-hmm. So all of us got here because of penetrative sex. Yes. That was not protected.
Right.
But we don't generally think of it that way when we're talking about heterosexual couples. Right. It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. So what if we start from that standpoint? Mm-hmm. There are no shoulds. Yes. People often say to me, because the epidemic of HIV in this country is most prevalent right now in the South with young men of color between the ages of 15 and 30. And people say to me, well, what would you say to a young man of color who's living in the South about PrEP? Would you tell them you should use PrEP? I was like, no. I would never tell someone what they should do with their body. And honestly, I wouldn't say very much. I would want to listen.
Yes.
I can't tell. I'm a white guy in his 50s. I have no authority. I don't have the right to tell anyone how to think, how to feel, how to vote, how to I'm not going to say the F word. How to have sex, or how to prevent HIV. I cannot and will not do that. But what I will do, given the opportunity, is to say, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What are your hopes? And what kind of connections and sexual experiences do you want to have? And if I have ideas or tools that fit in your framework, maybe I can help support what you want, not the other way around.
Right.
And that is where I come out that point of view from a HIV prevention and harm reduction model. That's a collaborative conversation that we have. But it's not about me as white guy telling people what they should be doing with their bodies. That doesn't work. It has never worked. Why do we think it's going to work today if it hasn't worked for the last 40 years? It doesn't. Let's drop it.
You inspired me because I worked with Fenway Health in Boston, and when they had 2011 maybe, I remember when they had that prep, or 2010 or maybe 2011. No, hold on. When did I move? No, it was prior to that, because I moved to New York 2011. So it must have been 2010 when they were having the trials.
The iPrex trial was at Fenway. Yes.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, the prep trial.
Was it 2010 then?
Yeah, it was still going in 2010.
Okay.
Fenway was involved from 2007 through 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was gonna join it to be part of it, but I had a boyfriend because they wanted partners. And then he's like, because we're not into Western. Actually, that's the only Western medicine that I do. Like. Because I tend to, of course, I feel like certain things, if I need to, I can go Eastern. Some certain things, if I need Western, I'm going to do it, like a dentist, etc. But I make sure to do personal medicine first instead of going to somebody else. So with that said, so my boyfriend then had the same mentality. So we're like, okay, we're not going to do PrEP. We're not having sex outside of a relationship anyway, so whatever. But I also know human nature. I'm poly, or I'm labeled poly, I'll rephrase that, and also labeled pansexual. So I also know human nature, and although it was a monogamous relationship, and later on I started working with Fenway Health when I didn't accept to be in the trial, and then they hired me to recruit people. So that's when I had a Grindr and a Scruff and Adam for Adam and all these apps, and I had to go to colleges to recruit people, to like find people, etc. I don't remember what they called me then. And so I learned that more than half people who get any kind of STD or HIV had partners.
Yeah.
It's human nature. People have sex.
Yes.
And then I was like, I guess being pansexual or poly, I don't believe in the word cheating. Yeah. And I think other people, that's their prerogative. We're not talking about you, just me or us.
I've written about this. I call it the myth of cheating. Because that's inherently a problematic word. That's saying, okay, if I'm in a couple with you and I decide to express my body sexually with another person, that I'm doing something against you.
Right.
That I'm cheating. So that means, like, I'm winning, you're losing.
It's like a should thing.
It's like this whole paradigm of language that villainizes and pathologizes sexuality. And then we wonder why we have an HIV and STI problem in this country. You know, so when I agree.
And shame.
Every HIV agency I worked at for the better part of 20 years, we would informally talk in the staff. Like, it seems like about 30% of new clients coming in, or people testing positive, or people saying or telling us that they got this in a monogamous relationship.
Yeah, or they had one partner.
Yes, they only had one partner, and I know they're being very honest about that, but their one partner didn't only have one partner.
Yes.
And that is how, just we used to say anecdotally, like, well, we think it's about 30% of people who get HIV are getting it in monogamous relationships. Then the CDC came out with data, Patrick Sullivan's work, that said it's actually closer to 68% in the U.S. 68% of new HIV diagnoses amongst men who have sex with men are taking place in main relationships.
So if you know that, that's the facts, you need... Can I say need?
If you wish.
I mean, it's like you need, but it's not like It's your prerogative, basically, what you do with that information.
But so many people are inundated with what you said earlier, the mixed messages of things that make sense like that, but then their religious ideas of what relationships should look like.
Right.
It should be monogamous. It should be, quote, faithful, which is another word I hate.
Oh, yeah, right. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, it's like, it should look a certain way, so I'm going to act like it is a certain way when it's not a certain way. And it's in that juxtaposition that we see so many people becoming newly diagnosed with HIV and coming in with untreated cases of gonorrhea and syphilis.
Right.
So, again, it's just like, well, what if we just put all that should aside and just get real?
Yes.
Sexuality is beautiful. Human connection is healthy. Sexual touch and consensual touch is necessary in terms of our growth. And if we start from there, can we have real conversations about ways that people can engage in physical, erotic, sexual connections and remain healthy at the same time?
Yes.
And the other part of that I want to say earlier, I didn't get to, was undetectable is untransmittable. And that I think is really important because it's that understanding, and this is medical science, and the CDC and everyone now acknowledges that if someone has HIV, if they have the HIV virus in their body, and they're taking medications that suppress the viral load, they cannot sexually transmit HIV to another person. So let's say I'm HIV negative, and I'm not on PrEP. If I'm having sex with a partner who's HIV positive and undetectable, there is zero chance I can get HIV from that person. And I just want to make sure, because we talked about PrEP and condoms earlier, that we have, so I want to make sure that U equals U, undetectable is untransmittable, is part of that, because that's another harm reduction tool.
Yes.
And it kind of says, okay, well, that's assuming that I'm only having sex with one person who is positive, but just that idea, like, if I wasn't on PrEP, and I'm all up on Grindr or Scruff, and I'm looking to get some something, and I don't have any PrEP, one guy says, I'm HIV positive, I'm undetectable, and the other person says, hey, baby, don't worry about it, I'm negative, so we don't have to use protection. Who am I more likely to acquire HIV from?
I learned that, yep.
Right? People who are living with HIV who are undetectable cannot transmit HIV. And that is the other thing, part of this conversation that's important to have when we're talking about harm reduction and empowerment and removing the shoulds. Because, especially, I think we've been taught to approach people living with HIV in terms of some sort of fear, in terms of saying, oh, these people, especially in the 80s, like the vectors of disease transmission. Now, with the technology and the science we have, it's exactly the opposite.
Right, yeah.
Right?
So fear versus facts.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Facts over fear.
Yeah.
Medicine over morality. Science over stigma. Evidence over emotions. That is what the undetectable U equals U movement is all about.
Nice. And I remember to say, you inspired me to make my decision. And that's what I love about you and your work. You give the information and you let people make their choice.
Thank you.
And you don't shoot them. And you do not, as many people do, oh, this is a fact, and you should do this, and you a moron, and people do that a lot. And what good does it do?
In my experience, not very much.
Yeah.
Not very much. Thank you for that. Thank you. I really value that.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Because as I said, I was gonna do trials, and I worked for them. And funny thing is, people think I don't believe in medicine. It's not true at all. Same with the vaccine kind of talk. That's another topic. They think I'm against. I'm like, no. It's just like, when you're ready. I practice intuition. I was in a homosexual relationship, 2014, and that's when I started searching the PrEP thing. So a week happened. I was in a relationship. Intuition. I read a meme that says intuition. What it says? There's no. Damn it. It's not like there's no argument in intuition. It's kind of like intuition doesn't have rhyme and reason. It just is. I woke up one day. It says get on PrEP. Get on PrEP. Yeah. And then I searched. I don't think I joined that group that time, but I was on the prep group in Boston, and it's not even till this day. It's not so active. Your group is more active. I went on there, asked some questions, talked to some couple of people, and then you were there. You gave an article. You said something nice, something inspiring, and everyone there was so nice. And I don't remember if it was you exactly or some lady who said, she says something like, when you are, and that's part of integrity and self-responsibility, when you enter a space with someone else, you are responsible for your side only, not theirs. And that's like going deeper. That comes with emotion. Like, do you hurt people? Like Byron Katie, like ask this question, or am I responsible for that person feeling whatever? That's another thing. But when she said that, just like the female condom, give the female the power herself to wear it and not depend on the male to wear a condom.
Yes.
You have your own power. So I was like, oh, I have prep for me, not for the other guy. Oh, I wear a condom for me. Of course, for them too, but if you do something for yourself that's good, it's for them too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
So thank you for inspiring others and inspiring me.
Thank you for recognizing that. That is very core to my values.
Yes.
Again, is to help people learn and grow with that respect.
Yeah. And if you're hammering people, probably some people will get it and probably some people would not. And I'm telling you, like, beside intuition, tell me that week. And if that page wasn't there that week, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after we broke up, there was that text. He's positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were on prep, or you had...
I got on prep that week.
Wow. Okay.
And, oh my God, I'm getting chills. But I want to say, at least for me, there's no shame in having any disease. That's what I believe.
Yes.
Because no one has shame for having a cold.
Yeah.
No one's has shame for having cancer or breast cancer or anything.
Diabetes, cholesterol.
Exactly. So there shouldn't be having a shame for having STD. I've had all the known STD, well, besides HIV, of course. I have gonorrhea, syphilis, chlamydia. I think those are the major 3.
Yep.
And hepatitis C not. Yeah, so there's no shame. It's a human thing. Yeah. So, but with that said, most of us don't wake up and be like, let's look for it. Even though when I was younger, there was this group called Bug Chasers and I was part of them. But I'm glad that it happened still. Like, most people want the best for themselves, let's say. That's what I'm trying to say. So me, because we want our best for ourselves, and me being relieved that I didn't get HIV does not mean that someone who has it is worse than me or something bad, etc., etc. So my thing of when that happened is it reinforces me to trust my intuition.
Yeah. Stop
having rhyme and reason to why. Yeah. Like before, when I didn't need it, I didn't even think about it. It didn't come up. Like I was like, okay. Oh, I was serial sorting. Is that how I pronounce the word? And I've learned, I could be wrong, but I learned it's not so good. It's well, like bad.
I said earlier,
yeah.
Someone tells you they're positive and undetectable, and someone says, don't worry, I'm negative. Who are you more likely to get HIV?
Exactly. And, oh my goodness.
So that's serial sorting. That's an example of saying, okay, if I only have sex with people who claim they're HIV negative, that is not a medically sound
it's not.
HIV prevention strategy
so
at all.
Learn, do your research and make your own decisions, of course.
Yeah, and if you really don't want to, if you're negative and you really don't want to be on PrEP, then just have sex with HIV positive people. Yeah. I mean, that's the next, if you're not going to use condoms or PrEP, that's the next, that's the way to prevent HIV.
Right,
if you're going to serosort, only positive partners.
Maybe at least 4 or 5 people texting they were positive.
Yeah.
And in a sense, I dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
I was serial sorting.
Yeah.
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 And working with Fenway Health, I knew people got STIs through partners, and my boyfriend at the time, and I could see like me in the past like being so stuck in a way of being against things. That's why I don't want to be against things anymore. Even like a new thing as of last year against racism. Even that I don't want to be against because there's that energy. I'd rather collaborate, but that's another topic. So knowing that even in being in a relationship, thinking that you're safe, but you're not in charge of your partner.
Right.
And it's not like I'm saying, oh, don't trust people. People are going to cheat and da-da-da-da. It's not even that. It's just people are people. Yeah. Humans are human. They're going to do what they... How many times your parents tell you to do something, or even your boss tell you to do something, and how many times did you not comply? Not because you're bad or anything. It's just you're human. Right. And knowing that human nature will help you make your decisions.
Right. And when I teach about prep, very much the same thing. It's not, I don't take prep because I don't believe in people. I take prep because psychologically, the power that it gives me.
Yes.
As someone who grew up in the 80s, terrified, who really witnessed up close the devastation of AIDS, not only in the public sphere, but in my private life throughout the 80s and 90s. That terror has been front and central for every sexual encounter of my adult life. Yeah. And it wasn't until I started using PrEP at age 40 that I started to begin to reduce anxiety related to sexual activity.
Yes.
And I am someone who primarily prefers bottoming. So what that means, technically, is that it was always contingent on the top, the insertive partner, to wear a condom and make sure it didn't fall off or break or fall in. That meant my sexual health was always contingent on another person's judgment.
Yes.
PrEP was the first time I had the power to make that decision for myself instead of relying on someone else. So just inherently, the psychological difference between saying, my health is in your hands, or rather on your penis, and saying that my sexual health is in this pill that I choose to use on a daily basis, that made such a difference too.
Right. Very empowering.
It's very 100%. Different. I am uploading one of the episodes of Tub Talks today. And so I'll just say a little bit about that.
Sure,
but,
yes.
I've decided, I thought years ago, but I've only just in the last few months started filming a series called Tub Talks. You mentioned Tub Talks with Damon. And it's an opportunity to talk with leaders and therapists and healers and artists and creators and educators naked in my bathtub. And I hope you'll join me.
Yes,
I'm going to ask you publicly. Think about it.
Okay.
I'm filming them out in Williamsburg, but basically they're 10 to 15 minute conversations. They're not naked per se. I mean, we are naked in the tub, but you can really only see you can't. It's a tub, so you can't see. But I just wanted to have that opportunity to talk with people I haven't seen in a couple years now, and to say, like, what happens when we talk about serious issues and kind of silly situations.
Right.
But that's kind of where I'm at now, and that ability to do that. And so I'm uploading one today.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking earlier about seeing your life as good or bad, right? Depending on how you see it. The talk that's going up today is with someone who has survived anal cancer, a gay man who likes to bottom, who has survived anal cancer. And in many ways, that's a fear a lot of us have. And he's telling his story, but he says so many times, but I was lucky because this. I was fortunate because this, because I have a good doctor, because my doctor found it earlier. I was lucky because it didn't metastasize. I was lucky because he's kept referring to himself as lucky. And that seeped in after we did the interview, that like, here's an example of someone who is so powerful and resilient, and despite what's happened to him and what he has been through, his mindset is abundance and fortunate and lucky.
Right.
And it's like, that was just a reminder to me, and re-emphasizing that so much of what we experience emotionally is less about what happens to us, but more about how we interpret what happens to us and around us. Yeah. So I'm really excited to upload that today.
Nice. How can someone reach out to you?
Okay.
Listening to this?
So DamonLJacobs.com, as I said, Damon L. Jacobs, don't forget the L. All my information there, the contact information. I can easily be reached at shouldless@gmail.com, shouldless, SHOULDLESS @gmail. If you go to tubtalkswithdamon.com, I'm uploading the Tub Talks 1 or 2 a week on that. Just started doing that, so there's not a lot there, but there will be soon. And I don't know how else.
You're right.
You know, if you ever see me at the Eagle on Saturday night, say hello.
And I will definitely put all the links in the description below. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Yes.
Thank you. What a wonderful conversation.
Yes.
And thank you for having this forum.
Yeah.
And this energy. It's
yeah.
beautiful.
Totally.
Thank you.
you.